Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. 2 ATP 500 finals to break down on this week's show, and then a preview of the Paris Masters 1000 in Bercy. One last event until the next gen finals, the ATP finals. The race is somewhat interesting right now. Andre Rublev in pole position to get that 8th and final spot, although technically it's Novak Djokovic, but he's going to get in. He's right now 10th in the race. He won a major, so he's going to get in. Right now in pursuit is Hurkacz and Fritz. But I want to start with last week's finals. Excellent tournaments. I felt a lot of the best indoor hardcourt players in the world right now ended up playing at the end of last week's tournaments. And I do want to start with Vienna. Daniil Medvedev beating Denis Shapovalov in 3 sets. I don't normally do this, but I want to start with the loser. I think Denis Shapovalov left the biggest impression on me from last week. If there's one player who kind of made me raise my eyebrows and think long and hard about if I should be kind of making some reevaluations in my head, it was the tennis that Denis Shapovalov was playing, even in a losing effort in that final against Medvedev. To me, Shapo looks completely different. He's literally unrecognizable, and I mean that in the best possible way. There has clearly been an effort for him to cut down on the errors, and I think he's done 2 things to try to make that happen. On the technical side, there's a certain body control that he is playing with that I don't even really feel like I knew what it looked like for Shapovalov to be in control of his body to this extent, to the point where I never really thought or discussed Shapovalov being wild and off balance with his technique. But once, now that he's kind of fixed that and he's kind of rolled back those habits, it's so striking. Shapo just looks different out there with how balanced and in control he is. It starts with kind of keeping his head still, controlling his follow-through, especially on the backhand side where he's just not getting quite as wild with it. And there's a serenity and a calmness in his technique that is very noticeable right now. The second part of it is in his head when it comes to his decision-making and his shot selection, something that he has really, for a long time, tried to get a hold of and grapple with and improve. And I think it's been very, very hard for him to do so. Mikhail Yuzny tried very, very hard to get Shapovalov to start making good decisions. And man, it's been an uphill battle. Right now, Peter Polansky has come on. There was a short Jamie Delgado stint this year. The coaching has not been consistent with Shapo, but it seems like Polansky has kind of gotten to him. When it comes to the decision-making part, he's just playing with way more discipline. I've never seen him play with so much discipline in my life. The decisions are good ones. He's not over-pressing. He's not over-hitting. He's in control of his body. He's in control of his mind, and he's making less unforced errors. He didn't lose that match against Daniil Medvedev because he was spraying his ground strokes wildly. He lost it for some other reasons. I'll get to him in a moment. I also thought he was especially dialed in on his backhand, and I liked that. For me, it looked like his mentality was, look, I am going to mostly trade cross-court on my backhand. The forehand is the moneymaker for me, and I don't want to lose a match because I'm missing on my backhand. I would rather live and die by the forehand. So he was pretty patient on that backhand, a little bit more aggressive on the forehand, and I like that. I think that's how it should be. Now, I do want to emphasize that Denis Shapovalov did not turn into a defensive player. He did not turn into a passive player. That would be bad. That would be a waste of the offensive talent that he possesses. And it would go against his DNA. It would take away what makes him special as a player. He shouldn't do that. He didn't do that. just because he was disciplined, just because he was patient, just because he took certain measures to cut down on the unforced errors, it didn't mean that he wasn't aggressive and offensive. He still was, but he did it in a certain way against Daniil Medvedev, which is that when he was in finish mode, he did not try to blast his way past and through Daniil Medvedev off the ground. He hit controlled approach shots, and he trusted his volleys. He's a really good volleyer. He's a pretty good doubles player. Played a lot of doubles. I don't think his record is great, actually. But I like his volleys. Got good hands, good technique, moves well at net. So the way he was attacking short balls was the most responsible way he can attack short balls, which is hit controlled approach shots. And he just wasn't trying to blast through Medvedev, because players who try to do that make errors. It doesn't work. He's too good defensively. So I really loved Shapovalov. I loved what I saw from him all week. And despite him losing this final, you remember a couple weeks back when he made the final in Seoul, I was impressed with his form there. And on my show, I said, wow, that looked pretty interesting. I don't know if that is the new Denis, because that was just 1 week. So I'm just going to continue to monitor this, continue to watch this. Has Shapovalov gotten consistent? Has that happened? Has he really managed to sustainably cut down the errors? And after Seoul, Tokyo, he makes the semifinals. He beats Borna Coric, good win. Stockholm, a bit of a bump in the road, loses to Alex de Minaur, who just owns him, terrible head-to-head. And then here in Vienna, he makes the final. He beats Taylor Fritz, he beats Dan Evans, he beats Borna Coric again. Loses to Medvedev in the final. I thought he played a good match. Brilliant first set, which he won 6-4. But Medvedev won the next two sets, 6-3, 6-2. Let's get into why Shapovalov wasn't able to go all the way and hold the trophy at the end. And I should add, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating for Shapovalov fans, because he's just lost a lot of finals and semifinals in his career. What is it now? I mean, he hasn't won since Stockholm, which is his only title. I mean, he did have the ATP Cup. That doesn't count as a title, obviously, but he did have that. I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, tough record in finals. What is he tour level finals? Let me check that real quick. Level ATP. He is 1-5 now. So yeah, that's Stockholm. Obviously, it's been the semifinal, which is, previously was the hurdle for Shapo until he made that final of Stockholm. And since then, he's lost a bunch of finals. All right, why did Medvedev win? I think the biggest difference here was he was able to kind of keep Shapo away from the net. And once he was able to keep Shapo away from the net and kind of keep him at bay and pin him back, and they're getting into a lot of baseline rallies, even though Shapovalov was well suited to handle them better than maybe he ordinarily would, it still advantaged Medvedev there. Medvedev outserved Shapovalov, really solidly in this match. But in the second and the third sets, the big difference was Shapovalov wasn't getting the net. And I think one of the big reasons why, there's a couple of them. First thing, Medvedev's backhand really started to shut down everything that Shapovalov was really trying to do. I mentioned that Shapo was pretty passive on his backhand. He was trying to create offense with his forehand. And mainly the combination that Shapo's looking for was, to go aggressive cross-court on the forehand and then, find the short ball and then take the forehand down the line and approach off of that. But Medvedev's backhand, it's so difficult to make any progress on it. That's why when I did the Hulk episode a week ago, Medvedev was my backhand defense guy. Because you just can't, it's not even that he, scrambles well with his backhand and makes extra balls on his backhand. It's like you just can't get a short ball going to Medvedev's backhand. And for Shapovalov, the lefty, that cross-court forehand, heavy topspin, he hits a very heavy cross-court forehand. Medvedev just didn't care. And in the second and the third set, he was taking that backhand pretty early. He was kind of roping it down the line. He was hitting it deep cross-court, and Shapovalov just couldn't create any offense off of his cross-court forehand. I thought that was a big factor. Just wasn't getting the short balls. In the third set, Medvedev started passing like a wizard. There wasn't much Shapovalov can do. maybe there was just a little bit of quality lacking in some of the approach shots, a little bit too tame. I don't know. It's hard for me to criticize him both ways because at the end of the day, Shapovalov wasn't missing, and that's a good thing. But ultimately, Medvedev just started to dial in on the passing shots, and I didn't think there was much Denis could do in that third set. But the critiques for Shapovalov, yeah, he didn't make first serves. It was a bad serving performance for Shapo, and that's going to contribute to, him having to play more of those neutral baseline rallies with Medvedev because he can't take control behind his first serve. Shapovalov only made 51% of his first serves for the match. He won 78% of his first serves, which is awesome against Medvedev. It tells you that when Shapo was getting something to attack, he was actually playing really well and doing a great job of capitalizing off of that. Just wasn't getting anything to attack because he wasn't making his first serves and his cross-court forehand wasn't getting him anywhere. And then, I don't think he was serving volleying enough. That's another critique. I thought it was very effective in the first set. He seemed to go away from it. I didn't get that. And then lastly, he just couldn't execute on the drop shot. To Shapo's credit, he stopped hitting the drop shot when it wasn't working. But, it can be a nice play against Medvedev when you use it sparingly and you don't telegraph it. But Shapo's drop shots were just heavy-handed, too deep in the court, and he kept getting burnt on it. So no serve volley, no drop shot, bad serving, not really going to cut it. Medvedev, great defense, very solid from the back of the court. Medvedev served well, and he wins this. But let me give you the net stats here. Shapovalov was 16 of 19 in the first set at net. So, it was really a huge reason why he won the first set. And then in the second set, well, the percentage was good, but he didn't get up there much. He was 8 for 11 in the second set. And then in the third set, not only did he not get there much, but he didn't win when he got there, and he was 4 of 10. So 6 of 19, 8 of 11, 4 of 10. Constant decline in Shapovalov's success at net. So that match started to be played from the baseline. Shapo played 2 loose service games, with errors. And then Medvedev went God mode on a return game in the third to get that double break. And as I said, Medvedev was serving really well. So there you have it. Second title of the year for Daniil Medvedev. And he looks back. I said it in Astana. I'll say it again now. Medvedev looks like, 2021 Daniil Medvedev. FAA in Basel. He wins it. Third straight title. He's got the hat trick. I was very disappointed that in Basel, nobody threw their hat onto the court. If I were there, I would have thrown my hat. Felix, being from Montreal, would have really appreciated that. He knows the deal. When you score a hat trick, throw your hat. Throw the damn hat. So I thought that was a miss by that Basel crowd. But yeah, it's super rare that someone is able to win 3 titles in 3 weeks. It's damn hard. Murray did it in 2011. Ruud did it last year. But for Felix, it's a 13-match win streak. I think one of the most notable things I can say about Felix is 4-1 in finals in 2022 after losing his first 7 career finals. 4-1. So, yeah, the finals, that finals thing, it's kind of irrelevant. And look, all of these finals are an indoor hard court. I'm not going to belabor that point. I've already talked about it. But I think next time he's in a final, is he even going to really be thinking about, is there going to be any baggage, any scar tissue that even exists anymore? I don't think so. I think he's completely gotten through that. So that's huge. In terms of Felix's win, 6-3, 7-5 over Holger Rune. And by the way, some people are calling him Rune. Some people are calling him Rune. If you are from Denmark and you want to weigh in on how an English speaker should say his name, I did speak to a Swedish friend of mine. He told me Rune. So if you want to weigh in on that in the comments, go ahead, and I will. I always take those things into consideration. I'm going to go with Rune. I think that's correct right now. So look, FAA, and I will get to Holger. FAA's reached like Berrettini levels of serve plus 1 play. It's absolutely insane what he's doing. Rune actually did better than anyone else all week in Basel in winning first serve points against Felix. All right, I'm going to read you the percentages here. First serve points won all week for Felix. 89%, 92% against Kecmanovic, 88% versus Bublik, 82% versus Alcaraz. And then finally, Rune gets him under that 80% mark. And Felix wins 78% of his first serve points against Holger Rune. So nobody did better. Nobody did better than Holger Rune. But did he do well? Not really. No. FAA's serve plus one still was just kind of unplayable. And let me break down what this looked like statistically. And it comes down to precision. It comes down to just how well his spot, how good his spot serving is. He averaged 126 miles per hour on his first serve, but he's just pinpoint accurate. And then on that next forehand, he takes it early. He doesn't need time to generate power because of his compact stroke production. So he takes it super early. He hits it really hard, but same with his serve. He's just deadly accurate, and it's super hard to read where he's going with his forehand when he hits it from an open stance. He's got a Federer quality about him. It's a somewhat wristy forehand, but he kind of holds it till the last second, and I don't think anybody can read where it's going. So let me break this down. 61 total points in this match by Felix on serve. 61 points. 23 of those points were unreturned serves. Rune didn't get it back. So that's 38%. Okay, that's 23 of 61, 38%. Now, plus one finishes. Either Felix hit a winner on the plus one, or Felix forced an error, so Rune missed the fourth shot of the rally. 14 times that happened. That's 23%. So you add that up, 14 plus one finishes, 23 unreturnables, and you divide it by how many total serve points there was, 61. You get to 61%. 61% of Felix's serve points. Not the ones he won, just the total points were won on the serve plus one. That means, I need to emphasize how crazy this is. That means that Felix could have played the match with a stipulation. Stipulation that he's only allowed to swing the racket twice. Serve, you get one shot, and then you need to drop the racket. You're not allowed to play. He still would have won the majority of his service points. What? I don't know how many players can compare to Felix right now on the serve plus one. Ruud maybe on clay, Nadal on clay, or Nadal in general because of how good his forehand is. Novak serve plus one is at this point underrated. Berrettini, I think definitely. Berrettini's probably the only guy who, like Felix, probably has a top 10 first serve and a top 10 forehand. I don't know if anybody else in the world has, can say that, although, it's certainly debatable. So I'm not saying that definitively, but Felix is right there. But if there's one thing that surprised me in this match, it's how good Felix's backhand was. In both games, Felix broke. He hit these really awesome backhands down the line where, Rune really ripped a backhand cross court with a lot of pace, but he couldn't really recover to the middle because he hit a rocket. And Felix just, with a, redirection from Mars down the line. One was a winner. One, was virtually a winner, not quite. And interestingly enough, Rune had issues with his own backhand in both of those games. Each set was one break of serve. Felix, it was a lot of backhand to backhand stuff that I saw in both of those games. That's surprising because, I think generally speaking, you'd think Rune would have the advantage there. Not the case in this match. Let's give some love, though, to Holger, who is also on an absolute tear. He's made finals in the last three tournaments he's played, Sofia, Stockholm, and Basel. If you ask me about Rune before this run, I'd say there are two concerns with him. The first thing is the serving, and he's completely transformed that. He averaged 124 miles per hour on his first serve, pretty crazy good. not a pinpoint spot server, but if you're hitting it if you're hitting it mid 120s, like you're gonna get away with that. Wow, I can't speak. So the serve is huge. And by the way, the second serve average was 110 miles per hour, which is a joke. That's about as good as you'll see from anyone. So the serve looks really good. And then the second issue that I would have brought up if you asked me about Rune after the US Open, I would have said that cramping thing is not necessarily gone, because there were some incidents over the course of the clay court season. And if my memory serves, Winston-Salem was also a little bit shaky on the cramping front. I think there was an incident there as well. Now, I did speak to someone on Rune's team, and he told me that the cramping issue's been solved. It's all good now. And I know that Holger's been working with someone full-time to try to remedy that issue. And I feel like what he did in Stockholm kind of puts that to rest. When he won in Munich, when he won his first career title, he blew the brakes off of everybody. Every single match was quick. Nobody could even blow a candle to him. Hold a candle to him. Let me get that right. Hold a candle. So it didn't really show anything about his endurance. But in Stockholm, he wins a 3-setter against Cam Norrie, who always makes you work hard, 2 hours, 6 minutes. And then he wins 2 hours, 50 minutes against Alex de Minaur. And then he recovers for the final and beats Tsitsipas in straight sets. All right, I'm sold. If your team is telling me cramps are a non-issue now, and you're doing that, all right, I'm sold. The cramps have been sorted. That's what it looks like, at least. It's still something to monitor. And, we all know off the ground, he's kind of in that Sinner Alcaraz vein. He's got huge power off of both wings and just has, he's a great modern ball striker, awesome racket speed, super strong, good movement. So Rune also, heck of a run from him. But it didn't feel like he could do much against Felix in this match on return, especially because FAA has just been that good on the serve +1. Paris preview. Let's do it. Here's your thumbnail. I love this center court in Bercy, but I hate it on TV because the court looks like a square. And I'm sorry if I've ruined the viewing experience for you by pointing that out. But next time you watch Paris on TV, look how the court is distorted and looks like a square instead of a rectangle. All right, Carlos Alcaraz's quarter. No, let me give you some words first. Paris often feels like a Masters 1000 that can get a little bit wacky, wild, crazy results. We've seen, it's the only Masters 1000 that David Ferrer has won, for example. It is the only Masters that Jack Sock has won. Filip Krajinovic, right? Am I getting that? Let me just look at the recent champions here. I believe Filip Krajinovic was in a final, right? Let me check this out. And I think the reason for that is motivation, as I've kind of discussed. Why can't I pull this up? All right, we might just punt on this. Anyway, motivation is all over the place because the season is almost over. And if you are not one of the few players who are vying for one of those final 8 spots in the year-end championships, then you are likely hurt, you are likely tired, and you have one more left, and your state of mind is questionable at this point. So I think that's why we've seen some weird stuff, which is why I think, younger players have often done well. I think some of the veterans are checked out. Some of the top players are often checked out. It actually feels a little bit different this year. It feels like Novak has something to prove. It feels like Alcaraz is young and has something to prove. It feels like, Tsitsipas has something to prove. Medvedev has something to prove, hasn't had a great year. It just feels very different for a lot of these top players who, you know, yeah, there's been adversity. There's been a lack of tennis. They're more well-rested than usual, and they should be more motivated than usual. So I don't know that this is going to be a very, upset-filled Paris Masters as far as the top men are concerned. I actually like the prospects coming in of quite a few of them, in fact. Another thing to keep your eye on when it comes to conditions, this is generally, or historically, it's played kind of like a dead court. The ball doesn't bounce very high, and it's not fast. So it's kind of been like a dead bounce, so to speak. All right, by the way, I pulled it up. So yeah, Krajinovic was in that final against Sock in a very wacko 2017 Paris Masters. Karen Khachanov in 2018. That was weird. He's been to one final since. That was weird. Recently hasn't been very weird, though. Medvedev, 2 straight finals. Djokovic, 2 titles in the last 3 years. 3 finals in the last 4 years. Novak's actually dominated this event recently. Yeah, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Paris titles for Djokovic. All right, anyway, yeah, slow, low bouncing. That's traditionally how it plays. Seems like we might get a change this year, which puts me in a tough position trying to predict this tournament because the tournament director said it's going to play faster this year. And that was a tweet that I saw from our friend Ali, who you'll often see in the comment section. Been watching the show for a very long time. Appreciate him. Good Twitter account, too, that you should follow. I think, I don't know what it is exactly, but Ali 2022? I don't know. So, yeah, it might be playing faster this year. I don't know, something to keep in the back of the mind. So, but I don't really know because I haven't seen it. And a lot of the times one person says one thing about the court speed and not always gospel. I can say that. All right, without further ado, let's go to Carlos Alcaraz's quarter. He is the number 1 seed. You remember last year in Paris, he blew that 5 love lead, 5-love 40-15, something crazy against Hugo Gaston and went absolute meltdown mode and lost that match. So Alcaraz is the top seed. Andre Rublev, Hubert Hurkacz, and Matteo Berrettini are the other top seeds the other seeds, I should say, in this quarter. Alcaraz is with Berrettini. Rublev and Hurkacz are in a section together. My dark horse here is Holger Rune. Got to give him that respect for the form that he's been in, and as an unseeded player in this section, again, it's kind of a shoe-in, no-brainer that you make him the dark horse. He, in the first round, will play Stan Wawrinka, who's using his protected ranking here, and the winner will get Hurkacz versus Mannarino. My upset alert here is Matteo Berrettini. Berrettini, there have been a lot of reports coming out that Berrettini might withdraw, that he's not healthy. In fact, I do believe that some media outlets have reported that he did withdraw, but I still see him in the draw. So I don't know exactly what's going on with Berrettini, but I will say this. He is winless in his career in Paris. He is generally not very good on best of 3 on hard courts. It's just, he's like a 500 player for his career, best of 3 on hard courts. So I'm always a little bit dubious in these kinds of events, Masters 1000s included. And there are lots of reports that he's not healthy. So clear upset alert here is Matteo Berrettini, which would sort of open up Carlos Alcaraz's section of the draw. Berrettini is slated to play Arthur Fils, qualifier from France, who I've actually never seen play, which is very rare in a Masters 1000 draw that there's someone who I have not seen play. That's really rare. But yeah, Arthur Fils, haven't seen him. All right, early popcorn, Rune versus Wawrinka. Hey, Wawrinka in the first round, Wawrinka against a top player, you don't want that. I don't think Stan has the physicality to go deep in tournaments anymore for the most part. But you look at his October, Wawrinka has beaten Medvedev and he's beaten Ruud. He's got 2 top 5 wins in October. So it's an interesting first-round matchup for Holger Rune, and obviously we'll be seeing Rune's fatigue levels, how he's holding up as he's played not quite Felix levels, not quite Felix, because I think it's been 3 tournaments in 4 weeks. I don't think it's been 3 in 3. But still, especially a player with a history of some physical issues, that's one to watch. My quarterfinal here is Hurkacz defeats Alcaraz. Hurkacz made the semifinals here in Paris last year. He serves well in the still indoor conditions, and this is a hard court Masters 1000 tournament. Hubert Hurkacz has torn up hard court Masters in his career like clockwork. And I think these big servers in fast conditions have made Carlos Alcaraz pretty uncomfortable in general. Alcaraz is great at breaking serve. He's great at winning return points because his returns are often so aggressive, and he's so good at defending behind his return. He's so good at winning baseline rallies behind his return. But the one area where I'm not that high on Alcaraz is against mega servers in quick conditions when it comes to just, getting returns in play. So I think that Hurkacz could bother Alcaraz in these kinds of conditions. And, Alcaraz, I'm pretty high on him in general right now. I think he's recovered from the U.S. Open. I think the hangover is over. But Hubie also kind of vying for that last year-end championship spot, which he has experience of doing. He did it last year. Certainly there will be no lack of motivation on the Hurkacz side of things. Now, the one wrench that you have to throw in this before I move on to the next quarter, both Rublev and Hurkacz have these nightmarish matchups potentially in the first round. Hurkacz plays Mannarino first round. Mannarino completely confounded him at the Australian Open in January. And I don't think it's comfortable for Hurkacz. I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that the lack of pace on Mannarino's ball really bothers Hurkacz. So that's almost an upset alert right there. Even though I have him moving through to the semifinals, Mannarino hasn't looked great. So I'm just kind of trusting Hurkacz to figure that one out and get through it. But that's one to watch. And then for Andrei Rublev, who I genuinely thought about putting through to the quarterfinals. I really did think about that. I thought about having Rublev beating Hurkacz and then Alcaraz beating Rublev. Those were my 2 scenarios here. Watch out for Rublev and John Isner. That might be a second-round match, Rublev getting the bye. Isner 3-0 against Andrei Rublev. Rublev has never played well at the Paris Masters in his career, which is ultimately a big reason why I didn't put him through to the quarterfinals and I put Hurkacz instead. Now with Isner, you have question marks. Hasn't played since he had to withdraw with the, I believe it was a wrist injury at the U.S. Open. So who knows what John Isner we're getting, but Rublev-Isner, that's an interesting one. Not a very comfortable matchup for Andrei Rublev. Let's move on to Daniil Medvedev's quarter. The top seeds are Medvedev, FAA, Taylor Fritz, Francis Tiafoe. This is almost a Team World quarter. Medvedev ruins it with the Team Europe, but that's almost like a Laver Cup Team World quarter right here. Medvedev, the defending finalist. My dark horses here, there's 2 of them, Jack Draper and Michael Ymer. Draper has that profile of kind of that younger breakout player, very good on indoor hard court from what I've seen. That's the kind of player from a motivation standpoint I really like at the Paris Masters. And he impressed me last week against Carlos Alcaraz. Michael Ymer has been a really, really tough out ever since the U.S. Open. He is just defending his rear end off. Super hard to hit through him. For some reason, loving the indoor hard. Not really something that I would predict Then again, grew up in Sweden. I imagine he played quite a bit on the indoor hard courts, and that's probably why. So those are my dark horses. My upset alert is Frances Tiafoe. Tiafoe, for his career, 1-3 in Paris. He's had 2 tough matches in a row, a couple of losses, and he's a momentum player, and I just feel like he's lost some mojo. I think that the whole North American hard court season probably took a lot out of Frances Tiafoe and his draw. It is qualifier Lorenzo Sonego in the first round, who's really good on indoor hard, who has felt these conditions. He's won a pair of matches, and that's why Tiafoe is upset alert to play the winner of Draper versus Rinderk Netsch. My popcorn match here is Andy Murray versus Gilles Simon. This has actually nothing to do with tennis, and it has nothing to do with Andy Murray, who I continue to pledge will not always be the popcorn match. And time again, every single tournament is the popcorn match. But this one's about Gilles Simon. He is going to retire. This is his last professional tournament as far as I know. I know he's retiring at the end of the season. I am assuming that this is the end of his season. And this would be obviously a great way to go out in his home country. I hope he gets plenty of fanfare. He had that great run at Roland Garros, which was special. It was fantastic. 20 years on tour for Gilles. Fantastic career. Fascinating player. I will miss him. Congratulations to Gilles Simon. With that, I reveal my quarterfinal in Daniil Medvedev's quarter. It is Medvedev defeats FAA. I think Daniil Medvedev is back. I continue to say that. He's proven that he can play a lot of tennis and withstand the physical and mental demands. Throughout the year, there have been some occasions where I have been at fault by, picking players coming off of a deep run at the previous tournament. One example of that was Indian Wells to Miami, Miami to Monte Carlo. I made a couple of mistakes on my predictions because I was too high on players who were good the previous week. Medvedev's that guy who's just shown that he can do it. He can go week to week to week and maintain his level. The physical and mental demands, he can do it. And I think in general, he came into this part of the season pretty well rested. For FAA, you could say, well, why do you have him going through to the quarters? I like his draw. The bye should help a lot. But at the end of the day, I actually think he's a tough matchup on Medvedev. The reason I have Medvedev coming through in this quarterfinal is because I think that he can withstand the rigors of this, physically better than Felix. And by the way, Medvedev hasn't played 3 weeks in a row like Felix has. So, look, there's certainly a concern that Felix has played too much tennis, but he's played plenty of quick matches, and he's just looked unstoppable. So I could not pick him to lose before this quarterfinal. Fritz is in his section, but there's not a lot of depth other than Fritz, I will say. Obviously, Ymer, my dark horse, that could be, he's going to have to play a ton of balls if they play. Ymer's going to make returns. He's going to run a lot, but there's nobody who I was ready to pick an upset over Felix. And that includes Taylor Fritz, who I like. Fritz is going to have to try to go deep here. If he wants to make the year-end championships, he'll also need Rublev to lose early. Same goes for Hurkacz, by the way. I don't really see it happening. So Medvedev over FAA. We move on to Casper Ruud's quarter. Top seeds are Casper Ruud, Novak Djokovic, Jannik Sinner, and Marin Cilic. My dark horse in this quarter, 2 of them, Lorenzo Musetti and Marc-Andrea Huesler. I was super impressed with Musetti on the indoor hard courts in Italy, Florence, and Naples. I thought he just looked outstanding with the intensity of his ground strokes, just how big he was hitting off of the ground, confident, good focus mentally. And for some reason, he's had a lot of a big scheduling emphasis on indoor hard courts. You know, one thing that you should have noticed about Musetti is he didn't play the golden swing this year on the South American clay courts. He stayed inside. He played Rotterdam. He said, I want to work on my game on these quicker, hard court surfaces. And I think it's important that I get my reps in these conditions. So this is where it pays off. I think he's hungry, another young player, and indoor tennis has been his jam. Hamburg, by the way, plays very close to kind of indoorsy conditions too. He can play very precise, especially on his backhand, and he knows how to win a baseline rally right now. I'll tell you that. Marc-André Hussler, shout out to the Sofia champion who came through qualifying in this event and will play Jannik Sinner, who comes in with some health questions. I could have put Sinner on upset alert. There's only one reason I didn't put Sinner on upset alert against Hussler in the first round. And that is because Sinner never gets upset in 2022. He just doesn't. He loses to good players. He doesn't lose to players ranked lower than him. So I couldn't put him on upset alert. My upset alert is Casper Ruud. Look, I know the surface is quicker, but I don't know if it's higher bouncing, and low bouncing courts just kill Ruud. Like, we've seen it on the grass. We've seen how much that has hurt his game, and it kills his forehand. It hurts his backhand too. If this is going to play like Paris usually plays, Ruud isn't going to have a lot of fun. Plus, since the US Open, in regular tournaments, Casper Ruud is 1-3. My popcorn match here is Lorenzo Musetti versus Marin Cilic. I'm expecting a high level here. It's a great contrast of styles, as Cilic will be looking to take the ball early, hit big, come forward. I expect Musetti to take somewhat of a counter-punching role in this match, and it's going to be very intriguing to see how Musetti does with big hitting Cilic in still conditions. Cilic is excellent on an indoor hard court, but as you know, I'm high on Musetti. I do believe Musetti is going to come through that matchup, and I have Musetti going all the way to the quarterfinal because I don't really trust Jannik Sinner in that section of the draw. And ultimately, I have Novak Djokovic in a rematch of that Roland Garros round of 16 match, beating Lorenzo Musetti and moving through to the semis. Let's go to our last quarter. The number 2 seed, the return of Rafa Nadal since Laver Cup. I guess it hasn't been that long, has it? Top seeds are Rafa, Stefano Tsitsipas, Cam Norrie, and Pablo Carreño Busta. I guess I should congratulate Rafa Nadal on his fatherhood. There's a couple of other players who had babies. Gael Monfils, congratulations to him. Congratulations to Alina Svitolina. And there's one more which I forgot. A lot of babies on tour in October. A lot of babies. All right, my dark horse is Denis Shapovalov here. This is another layup, but the funny thing is, I originally did this preview on Friday. I already had Shapovalov penciled in as my dark horse because of the way he was playing, yes, but also, the slower indoor hard courts, still conditions where Shapo can, really swing out with a little bit more reckless abandon in the still conditions. That's great for Shapo. He serves better. His tossing issues, which he sometimes has, not as bad indoors. And he just looked very motivated, fresh, and I don't know if he's going to be fresh anymore. That's kind of the question. But he's easily my dark horse here. My upset alert is Cameron Norrie. Oh, by the way, Shapo, last time he played Paris, 2019, made the finals. Cam Norrie is upset alert. Doesn't look right now. This is just a form thing. He's out of contention for the finals. There's really nothing for him to play for. He's probably ready for the offseason. Nothing really comes easily to Cam Norrie. So if he's not going to be completely locked in and fight like an animal like he usually does, he's not going to be very good. Popcorn match. I didn't really like any of the first round matchups. So I'm like, you know what? Nadal. The return of Nadal. First match as a father. I believe it'll be on Wednesday. And guess what? It's not going to be an easy one. Tommy Paul can ball. Tommy Paul is excellent on an indoor hard court. Tommy Paul has a great backhand. RBA, same thing. RBA makes you work. RBA never misses his backhand. Not quite as, big and imposing, but never misses. And also a great RBA is extra challenging on a low bouncing hard court. Rafa, again, this court doesn't really bounce traditionally, and that's why Rafa has not been good in Paris. Let me pull up Nadal's record in Paris, shall we? I'll pull that up, but I will also reveal my quarterfinal before we get to that. Quarterfinal here. Denis Shapovalov defeats Stefanos Tsitsipas. That's right. I think Shapo keeps it going. I know I just went on a tangent about how I shouldn't pick players to always do well after doing well the week prior because they're going to get tired and they're going to lose, but I couldn't resist. Great matchups here for Denis. And yes, that includes Rafa. That's a good matchup for Denis Shapovalov. So let us start there. Shapovalov versus Nadal. 3 straight matches now have been there for the taking for Shapo. And on a couple of occasions, the mental game, which is not always great for Denis, has gotten in the way of him beating Rafa Nadal. But you look at Rome 2021, third set tiebreak. Shapovalov had match points. Australian Open this January. Shapo should have won that match. Shapo was, won the third set, won the fourth set. Nadal was looking awful in the fifth, and Shapovalov blew it. I don't know how else to put it. Nadal also fights like the greatest warrior that we have ever seen, so I don't want to give him no credit. And then Rome. Shapo finally gets it done. This year's Rome. He beats him. I know Nadal was injured. Nadal looked terrible physically in that third set, which he lost 6-2. But this is a really good matchup for Denis because unlike the matchup against Medvedev, where he attacks with his cross-court forehand into Medvedev's backhand and he can never get a short ball, he can never get anything to attack. That's actually not the case. When you go hard and heavy and you hit with a lot of quality into Nadal's forehand wing, Rafa can actually sometimes drop the ball short and Denis can attack. Plus, Rafa doesn't have, when he usually goes to the righty backhand and kind of attacks the ad court to find his short ball, he's going in the Shapovalov forehand. So it's a good matchup for Shapo. Tsitsipas, also a good matchup for Shapo. Are you kidding me? The way that Denis is attacking the ad court right now with his serve off the ground, you're telling me that Tsitsipas's backhand is going to hold up against that? I don't think so. So I'm putting him through. Look, Tsitsipas, love him on indoor hard. Like Tsitsipas a lot better on indoor hard court than I do on outdoor hard court. It just comes down to precision. Spot serving and hitting that +1 forehand with precision. And Tsitsipas does that really well indoors. That's why basically all of his finals and titles, actually, not basically, all of his titles and finals are, not finals, titles, okay, titles, are on indoor hard court, never done it on outdoor hard court. So Tsitsipas loses in the quarterfinal here to Denis Shapovalov. All right, let's go to the final weekend. Also, though, I shouldn't just say, matchup. We don't know, Nadal. Nadal hasn't looked himself in a while. Let's see how he looks. Hasn't played since the U.S. Open. Hasn't played singles, at least since the U.S. Open. So, I'm just kind of, it's a wait and see. But Shapovalov, with the way he's playing, it's not going to be easy. And obviously, as I mentioned, that first match isn't going to be easy for Nadal either. All right, final weekend. Medvedev defeats Hurkacz 3 sets. Traditionally, this has been a really tough matchup for Medvedev. But I don't know. I'm putting him through. That's it. I have no reasoning. Djokovic defeats Shapovalov 2 sets. Yeah, that's a terrible matchup for Shapo. We've seen that matchup actually a lot. Rematch of the Wimbledon semifinals of last year. But similar to what Medvedev did to Shapovalov in that final, just shutting Denis down, keeping him pinned to the baseline, not giving him anything to attack. Novak tends to do the same thing, Djokovic in 2. And then, I have the same final that we saw last year, Djokovic-Medvedev. And the extra court speed that allegedly we are about to see in Paris should help Novak kind of keep that match a little bit less physical, more offense, gets to the net more, uses the serve and volley with more effectiveness. And Novak is the fresher player, and that's a big deal to me. The fact that Medvedev went deep last week, so did Shapovalov, obviously. I like Djokovic off of rest. And let me just say, how good did Novak look in Astana? Come on now. That was a ridiculous level in Astana. So I'm riding that. And the man who has won 6 Paris Masters titles, I think he's in an awesome position to make it number 7. That's it for Monday Match Analysis. I will have coverage of the Paris Masters as well as maybe some stuff from the WTA Finals in Fort Worth next week. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.